Well, it finally happened. It's that moment where the polished, multi billion-dollar agenda of Hollywood crashes head on with some unfiltered, real world common sense. And the source of this beautiful collision wasn't some politician or a TV pundit, it was Snoop Dogg. And in a moment of genuine, unscripted honesty, Snoop Dogg, acting as a grandfather taking his grandkid to a Disney movie, said exactly what millions of parents and grandparents across the country have been thinking. And he shared a totally normal, common sense reaction to a confusing and, let's be honest, agenda driven scene in a kid's flick. And for the crime of telling the truth, the woke mob and their enforcers in the media are predictably losing their minds, and they're trying to brand him, cancel him, and shut him down for daring to step outside their approved narrative. So we're going to break down exactly what Snoop said, why his completely reasonable take is being viciously attacked as homophobic, and what this whole mess reveals about the culture war that companies like Disney keep fighting against their own customers. And this isn't just about a rapper and a cartoon, it's about the establishment's absolute panic when a cultural icon breaks ranks and validates what everyday people are already feeling. So with no further ado, let's check out two clips of what individuals are saying out there just to get the sentiment, and then I want to have more of a conversation and get you guys' thoughts and have a conversation.
Like, and she had a baby with a woman. Well, my grandson in the middle of the movie, like, Papa Snoop, how she have a baby with a woman? She a woman. They just said she had a baby. They both women. How did she have a baby? That's like, it fucked me. I'm scared to go to the movies now. Like, y'all throwing me in the middle of shit that I don't have an answer for.
Seriously, Snoop, you don't have an answer for that big, huge, confounding problem. Well, let me help because it's really not that difficult. When you're at the movie and this huge problem for which you have no coping skills comes up, and the child says, how is it that two women can have a baby? You don't want to interrupt the movie. You don't want to make a scene. You turn to your grandchild and you just say, look, every family's a little bit different. Don't you worry about it. Enjoy the movie. We'll talk about it a little more on the way home.
Damn, Snoop Dogg really did sell out from a West Coast legend to now a MAGA grifter, a bootlicker for the conservative right. I mean, you used to be a tone setter. Now you're just a sad old man. You built a whole career off of not flinching. Murder was the case. Smoking, you know what? Sex, women, the whole image. And now you're afraid to go to the movies. It's bad enough that you're a MAGA bootlicker.
So, what did Snoop Dogg say that caused this manufacturer meltdown? He was on a podcast just telling a simple, relatable story about being a grandfather. He took his grandson to see the Disney movie Lightyear, and yeah, that's the same movie that was supposed to be a blockbuster, but ended up being a legendary box office bomb. But during the movie, they get to this infamous scene where Buzz Lightyear's friend Alicia marries another woman, and a quick montage shows them with a child. And Snoop described his grandson turning to him right there in the movie theater and asking the most logical question any kid would ask. Papa Snoop, how should he have a baby with a woman? She a woman. So Snoop reaction wasn't hateful. It wasn't some political rant. It was a reaction to any it was reaction of any grandparent or parent put on a spot by a corporation that decided a children's movie was the right place for a lecture on social politics. And to take it a step further, when you really think about it, parents, and me being a parent as well, why I know growing up from my experience that my parents would not let me watch certain horror movies or horror movies to a certain age due to the developing mind and me not being able to withstand the horrifying effects, let alone images. Um, as I'm just being a kid and they wanted me to be a kid. And what are most kids movies are? They're pure, innocent, playful, energetic, and just the innocence, let alone with some mystery of something simple, right? That a child would engage in, not let alone looking at gender war or different genders or looking at some type of biology from same sex gender or anything like that. But it was pure. It was just enjoyable. It was nothing horrifying about it. It was nothing deep. It was just either a discovery or investigation or something where there was a victory at the end of the movie where the kid felt emotionally engaged, but it was enough for the kid as in it being PG, not even. well, PG-13, not rated R, as we would say, right? It's not something that's in debt or, overbearing for the child, is my point when it came to movies that were pure innocence like that. I'm talking about movies like The Lion King with just a musical tune, one of my son's favorite, just a musical tune of just music and, triumph and overcoming, adversity and then their victory in which you felt engaged with the movie as a child. So, now that movies are a bit different, and Snoop, as any other parent, would be stuck on how to describe this to their child because most of the time, as kids, when we come across something and adults may teach us something, what they usually say, "Oh, well, you'll understand this when you'll get older. You may not understand right now, but it'll all make sense then." Because we already know that we're telling them for their best interest, so it'll resonate at a then point in time that we had their best interest to tell the truth, but we also understand that they may not process the full entirety of the context or understanding of what we're saying because they haven't experienced nothing yet. So to expose in a movie, let alone a cartoon movie who's supposed to be for kids, um something that they haven't experienced or may have haven't came across, and a parent already having to look to, in this case, a grandfather having to look, and then there's boundaries because he don't want to tell his grandchild something that, his kids, in this case, his kids, being the parents of his grandchild may not approve of. So his boundaries in place that was being challenged, let alone just going for an enjoyable time with grandpop and grandson. But it turned into something because we all know kids are pure, they're innocent, it's the most purest thing to God, the most purest of the purest, and they gonna ask what it is, and they not gonna sugarcoat nothing. Shoot, they'll tell you you ugly to your face, so you know what I'm talking about. They'll tell you, "Oh, that don't look right." Right? So, that's just the truth of it all. And when you look at this thing and Snoop describing his grandson turn and turn right there in the theater, asking the most logical question, Snoop reaction wasn't hateful. It was just, look, if you looking at it, it was like, look, of any grandparent or parent put on a spot by a corporation that decided a children's movie was the right place for a lecture on social politics, let alone if you older, okay, then do whatever gender or whatever you do in your bedroom, that's your business. But to expose this to a child who is going through moments of self-discovery, trying to figure out who they are, let alone learn lessons of life, and to put a gender type of identity in front of them to question, and then it'll lead to them not understanding and being confused, which leads to confusion because they can't develop to understand that people are different, right? No matter how much you try to explain it, like the guy said in this video. But Snoop admitted he thought to himself, "Oh snap, I didn't come here for this. I just came to watch the movie." Right? So he didn't say it that way. He cursed, but I'm just, breaking it down in a nutshell. And he tried to deflect, telling his grandson to watch the movie, eat his popcorn. But the kid, being a curious kid, because all kids are curious, kept asking, They said they said she had a baby. So they both were women, and how did she have a baby? So this is the heart of it. This is the moment that has the left so angry. And Snoop ended his story by saying, "It's like I'm scared to go to the movies now. And y'all throwing me in the middle of stuff that I didn't have an answer for." So it threw me for a loop. But what part of the movie was this? These are kids, and we have to show that at this age, and they're going to ask questions. I don't have an answer, and that's what Snoop said. So let's be real here. This is not bigotry. This is not hate. This is a grandfather who just wanted to see a cartoon about a space ranger with his grandson, and instead he got blindsided by a scene designed to force a conversation he wasn't ready to have with a young child. And he didn't condemn anyone. He just stated a fact. Kids ask questions, and he, like millions of parents, doesn't think a Disney movie is a time or place to be forced into that discussion, and it's the definition of a common sense take. So the only difference is Snoop Dogg has a microphone big enough for the world to hear him. And because he dared to voice this simple frustration, the outrage machine sputtered to life, and the reaction was as swift as it was predictable. And almost immediately, social media activists started painting Snoop as a villain, branding him homophobic and out of touch. But you see the game they play, right? Snoop never said he was scared of people. He said he was scared to go to the movies because they put him in a situation he didn't ask for as a grandfather. So he's talking about the context, the forced dialogue, but the outraged mob deliberately twisted his words, and they turn and say, "I don't know how to explain this to your grandkid," into "I hate gay people." It's a dishonest, malicious tactic designed to shut down any real debate, and let alone it's also divisive rhetoric. And they called him a hypocrite with online comments like, imagine being Snoop Dogg, the face of weed murder rapper, but scared of representation in a kid's movie. This is another classic tactic about what aboutism, right? Because the content of Snoop's music made for adults has absolutely zero to do with what's appropriate in G-rated movies. It's a ridiculous comparison meant to score cheap points. And some media outlets, of course, were happy to amplify the online chatter, running headlines like Snoop Dogg under fire, Snoop Dogg faces backlash. And this is how the system works. A few loud activists on social media create a stare, and the media reports on the backlash as if it's a massive movement, which in turn creates more backlash, and it's a self-feeding outrage cycle. In fact, the noise got loud enough that an Australian Green Senator, Sarah Hanson Young, called for Snoop Dogg to be dropped as headliner for the Australian Football League's grand final, calling him a slur merchant over his comments and past lyrics. But think about that. For expressing a mild, common sense take on a kid's movie, a politician on the other side of the planet is demanding he lose a job. And if that isn't cancel culture, what is? So now I want you guys to see this second thing, and this is exactly what I was talking about. And now you get to see how Snoop Dogg said it, and which I quoted most of it, but check it out.
What was the movie with Buzz Light?
Toy Story?
Not that one, but
the new Buzz. The Lightyear. I think it's called Lightyear.
With Kiki Palmer's in that movie.
Okay.
She plays like the daughter. So we watching it, and the lady, which is Kiki's mama, they move on into the space years. They move down the line. They're like, man, she had a baby with a woman. Well, my grandson in the middle of the movie like, Papa Snoop, how she have a baby with a woman? She a woman. Oh, shit. I didn't come in for this shit. I just came to watch the goddamn movie. Hey, man, watch the movie. They just said she had a baby. They both women's. How did she have a baby? Shh. The movie ain't over with. So it's like, it fucked me. I'm scared to go to the movies now. Like, y'all throwing me in the middle of shit that I don't have an answer for.
Snoop Dogg, when will you stop disappointing me? Let's look at the direct quote. He said, I didn't come here for this. I just came here to watch the movie. So that's like, F me, I'm scared to go to the movies now. Y'all throwing me in the middle of this that I don't have an answer for. It threw me for a loop. These are kids. Do we have to show that at that age? They're going to ask questions. I don't have the answers. They're putting it everywhere. I honestly don't even know where to begin, but I'm gonna try. Can someone tell Snoop that having to explain how queer couples have kids is actually way less sexual and complicated than straight couples? You can go with adoption. In the case of the movie Lightyear, which he's referring to, you could just say a simple, sometimes science can help, because kids are a lot smarter and a lot more understanding than adults give them credit for.
So something very tragic just happened to Snoop Dogg. He said it fucked him up. He took his grandkids to see a kids movie, and it featured two mothers, a lesbian couple, just playing the role of mothers. He said it fucked me up and threw me into shit I don't have an answer for, and they're putting this shit out there everywhere. I want to give some perspective to Snoop Dogg. You should maybe focus on your decision to perform at the inauguration of a man who's leading a party that's attracting every deviant out there. Every deviant that's abusing children, every deviant that is trying to take the rights away from your granddaughters and from any of your dark-complected grandkids.
All right, so now people mad at Snoop because he said he feel uncomfortable taking his grandkids to the movies because there was a scene where one of the characters had two moms and he didn't want to have to explain that to the grandkids. And I get that. That's got to be uncomfortable. I totally understand it. And
Totally
honestly,
is uncomfortable.
You can't get mad at Snoop on this. Not this. Because he's traditional. That dude old school. He came from a whole other time. A time where bitches wasn't shit, but hoes and tricks. Who would lick on the... Well, you know. A time where it wasn't no fun. Can't nobody have any fun. Unless the homies could have some. That's sharing. They don't teach them kind of values in school no more. We talking about gin, juice, marijuana abuse, and murder. He ain't got no time to be teaching two moms to some kids. This dude probably still got to explain why he's still throwing up gang signs at award shows. He ain't got no time to talk about two moms to some kids. But I'll tell you what you won't see. You won't ever see him ever show love or respect for or associate with or ever be seen with somebody who has a negative image around them when it comes to how they are around kids. You ain't gonna never see that. Ever, ever. Ever.
I'm gonna tell you why the Snoop Dogg comment is irritating me so much. And if you don't know what Snoop Dogg said, let me tell you real quick, and I'm obviously gonna paraphrase it. He was being interviewed and he was complaining that he brought his grandkid to Lightyear, the movie Lightyear. It's a Pixar movie. I personally didn't see Lightyear, but I guess there's parents in the movie that are moms. So same-sex marriage. He's complaining that they're putting it everywhere and like now I'm gonna have to explain things. And like I'm not even gonna get into that argument of it because it's like, oh, okay, you don't wanna have to explain things. There's really nothing to explain. It's just like that kid has two moms. Like there's no explanation needed. But aside from that, the first thing that comes to my mind is how I don't think that Snoop Dogg would have any problem whatsoever having a music video or watching a music video where two women are making out. And all I'm saying is, if you have a problem with women being depicted in a relationship together and not a problem with women making out at parties, why? And I didn't hear once Snoop Dogg come out and say in the early 2000s, all of you need to stop putting women making out in your videos. Not once. He was pretty silent on that. So yeah, I'm a little sad. I feel like we lost Snoop Dogg, but I had already known that because I saw his true colors during the election. This didn't shock me at all. And don't come in the comment section saying, oh, well, this is a movie for kids. Okay, your kids are going to see everything in life. Are you not trying to prepare them? Are you not a parent? When my kid asks a question, why does that person have two moms? I go, because they do. Next question.
Well, I'm looking at it like this. I know how I was raised from my experience. The birds and the bees talk was basically at a certain age that is appropriate because I'm a young adult now and I transitioned from a kid to being a young adult. And that's for the role of the parents to, break down and actually have that conversation with on knowing how to protect yourself and the other person and things like that. So the traditional makeup and biology, it can be difficult because Snoop Dogg, obviously, him and his experience and his generation, he grew up obviously having a child with his wife, which then he had kids by his wife who was pregnant and carrying, and it wasn't woman on woman because obviously Snoop Dogg is not a woman. But I just think it was more of, look, this not my place, and I don't want to see her. It's uncomfortable because I don't want to sit here and have this with my grandson. I think it's for their parents and just respect for a boundary. And he just explaining that in the movie, it shocked him from his experience and how he handled it, but it threw him off. And I'm just looking at it like we have many, besides this situation that we're talking about, kids that throw you off, period. Because even me growing up or anything, they'll say something, you'll be like, yo, did they just say that? You know what I'm saying? I have watched kids at a recreation. I have worked at a recreation with kids, and they'll say or repeat things, that phase where they repeat things they see or hear, and you'll be like, yo, and you redirect them. But sometimes the redirection is like, especially you being a grandparent, is this my place? And how can I appropriately redirect it so it be in the boundaries of the parent and the grandparent? So now we just gotta ask the real question. What what Snoop Dogg actually said homophobic? Of course not. And the people screaming at it is they know it, but the charge of homophobia isn't a real response to bigotry anymore. It's a political weapon, and it's a club the progressive left use to silence anyone who disagrees with them. And they know most people are terrified of you know, um, being called that name, I guess. So they use it to shut down any conversation they don't like. But, you know, this has what it come to, and what Snoop expressed, in my opinion, just wasn't hatred. Hatred, it was just unpreparedness. And he was talking about the role of a parent or grandparent. And it's their job and their right to introduce complex topics to their children on their own timeline. It's not the job of Walt Disney Company. Disney's job is to entertain, not to hijack the parent-child relationship to push a social agenda, in my opinion. And the defenders of Disney will say it's just representation, but that's a weak argument because there's a huge difference between organic storytelling and clumsy forced messaging. And when a character's entire identity is reduced to um a certain checkbox or a diversity checkbox, it doesn't feel like representation. It feels like propaganda because it feels fake, and that's what so many people, including Snoop, are reacting to. So the irony is just staggering because the very people who screamed about representation demand that every single person must think and speak with one monolithic voice. So Snoop Dogg, he's a cultural icon, and he's a black man, but according to their own rules of intersectionality, he's supposed to be heard. But the second his real world experiences clashes with the rigid ideology, his identity means nothing. All that matters is obedience to the woke agenda. And I think conglomerates or a diversify of different opinions creates the beauty to have a productive conversation. That's why I'm having a conversation with you guys. I don't think the conversation should just be one way ever. But this is a critical moment when they come for someone as huge as Snoop Dogg for saying something reasonable in his experience. So they're sending a message to everyone else basically to shut up or you're next. But more and more people are tired of being silenced, I guess. And if you're one of them, you believe common sense is worth defending, then hit that subscribe button right now and then click the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown of stories the media is trying to spin. So Snoop Dogg's experience with Lightyear isn't a one-off. It's just a perfect snapshot of a much bigger um of a much bigger, and for Disney a much more disastrous, or I should say, yeah, disastrous problem. This is just one battle in a cultural war that Disney has chosen to wage, and it's a war that they are spectacularly losing. But let's look at Lightyear itself, because this was supposed to be a guaranteed hit and a spinoff of Toy Story and one of the most beloved franchises ever, and it had a massive 200 million budget and a huge marketing push, and it was a colossal failure and losing the studio an estimated 106 million. So why did it fail? The media will give you dozen excuses, but some may believe what Snoop Dogg has said. That the huge part is the audience, the parents and families. From what I've read from the report, is basically the real reason is that Disney refused and people refused to admit is that their audience, parents, and families stayed away because they didn't want their kids subjected to this kind of social messaging. And the proof is right there. Lightyear was banned in over a dozen countries, including the Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and specifically because of the same gender kiss. And this wasn't a niche concern, it was a global rejection of Disney's agenda. So instead of listening to people behind the movie, doubled down with stunning arrogance. And when asked about the backlash to the movie's representation, the star of the film, Chris Evans, called critics idiots. So he went on to say that they were dinosaurs, adding, um, and there was always going to be people who are afraid and unaware of trying to hold on to what was before, but those people die off like dinosaurs. And I think the goal is to pay them no mind, march forward, and embrace the growth that makes us human. But did you hear that? That's what his words that I just said. So if you're a parent or a grandparent or someone else who thinks a kid movie should just be for kids, the star of the film thinks you're an idiot dinosaur who should be ignored until you die off. And this is the contempt modern Disney has for its own audience. And it's very rejective and it's a one-way conversation. So they don't want to serve the children or re-educate them or educate them, I should say. And if you refuse, since they want to re-educate you in a different way and serve you differently, if you refuse, then they openly despise you. That's what it comes off like. And I just wanted to show you guys the article because they're basically saying Snoop Dogg slams LGBTQ plus, but this was the slander and the media spin that I was talking about. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Snoop Dogg, in a moment of genuine reflection as a grandfather, just I feel like told his truth about Disney's agenda. He was authentic and relatable to some and honest. And for that, the establishment is trying to make an example of him using their favorite weapon, cries of homophobia, to shut him down. But I don't believe he said, no, I don't hear, I didn't, he didn't say nothing divisive. I just think people are taking it out of context. And the incident has pulled back the curtain because it shows the utter contempt that, you know, companies like Disney have for families that built their empire. And it shows the left's absolutely intolerance for any opinion that deviates from their script. no matter how reasonably it's expressed. And most importantly, it shows that people are waking up because the box office bombs are proof, and the pushback to backlash against Snoop is more proof. So people are just tired of being lectured and having their kids used as pawns in a cultural war they never asked for. So I'm just breaking down two parts of the argument, and I gave you my experience of how I was growing up. Whatever as a kid, whatever I watched, it was for kids. And look, man, some people, I just cancel culture and all of this thing. I just think we need to come together, have a reasonable common sense conversation. But make sure you subscribe with your notifications turned on and let me know what you guys think. And do you agree with Snoop? Is Disney completely out of touch? Let's talk about it, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you guys. Peace.